All right, fun fact number one. I do not be the fourth presenter in a panel with four presenters. How many would have an answer to that question? Because I wanted to say hello in 13 languages. Shahid did that for me. So it's very, and a lot of people possibly out here would be yawning, waiting for this to get over, have a cup of tea, reminding you there are no breaks. So you've got to live this through. But if you promise me not to yawn or sleep through, I'm going to tell you a story. How many of you like stories? Wonderful, I'll tell you lots of stories. I also have presentations, and I love conferences and summits because I know all of you also do because all of you are here, but the reasons are different. I get to make them while you get to look at them. So that's the difference. So there are 170 slides. It took me about 3 weeks to get this done. And we'll come to them once I finish telling you the story. But before that, there is one more question I'd like to ask people in this house. How many of you do regular exercises? Regular, every day. Can one of y'all just step here? Just one. Somebody who does exercise daily, huh? Somebody is half an athlete or something like that? Come on now, there were so many hands. Can you get this light a little low? It's hurting my eyes, please. No, I need somebody here quickly. Somebody does a little bit of running, jogging, treadmill, cross country, a morning walk. Ah, wonderful. Now this is a little risky. Do you have insurance?
I don't think so.
You got your parents here?
No.
You have a girlfriend?
No.
It's all right then. Okay. Now you got to run here and can you jump?
Jump down.
Just 4 stairs, yeah. No, you can't walk here. Okay. You got to run and jump. 1, 2, 3. There you go. Now go back. One sec. Now's the fun part. Go back.
Go back.
No, not to where you started from, but just a few feet more. Jump up. And you got to do exactly what you did. Be careful, don't hurt yourself. No. You got to run up. Run and jump up. Okay. Be careful. If you break something, no one's responsible. Thank you very much. This is going to be a very fundamental factor of my presentation today. It's very easy to come tumbling down. But when you're going to go up, it's step by step. And this is where the story starts in the year 1932. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with the country called India. You just got some statistics. We have the highest number of poor people in the world, possibly. If Bangladesh was bigger, they would have, but since we are bigger in size, we have. And there was a gentleman born in a state called Gujarat, the richest state in the country, by the way. His name was Dhirubhai Ambani. He passed his class 10. He made money by selling, I don't know, you have anything like that in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, or Bali, but it's called bhajiyas. It's onions dipped in flour, deep fried, and sold with a cup of tetare equivalent called tea in India. It didn't suit him much. He went to a country called Yemen. He was a gas attendant at the age of 17 or 18 in a country called Yemen. Became an accountant later without studying accountancy. And came back to India in the year 1958 at the age of 26. And instead of going to Gujarat, he came to Mumbai and started a textile trading company in 58. He left for his heavenly abode in the year 2002. But in the year 2000, he was declared the entrepreneur of the millennium by the Indian government. So look at the story. It started in 58. It was not hurried. So it's easy going down. It's not easy coming up. It takes time. It took him 42 years to build an empire, which is India's largest corporate empire. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 decades. And if you see globally around the world today, projects are failing left, right and center, very simply because people are in this massive hurry to do things. You haven't even utilized 3G and you want 4.5G. So every project, any project, whether it's eradication of poverty, whether it's eradication of hunger, whether it's getting every child in this universe literate, will not and cannot happen overnight. It takes time. So if we as a group of individuals, corporates, countries, continents pledge that we will take time, we will not try and eradicate hunger tomorrow. We can't, even if we try. If we pledge that we will make it a goal for a longer period of time, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, there is a possibility that we'll be 85 to 90% successful. And that's the story behind the organization that I represent. It took time, it took years. We never tried to push things down anybody's throat, never tried to do things in a hurry. And thankfully, we were able to get to where we got to. Now, before the conference, before I started writing the presentation, when Marceline and Mr. Ghim spoke to me, the topic was eradication of poverty and hunger. And it took me the whole of 72 hours to figure out how I could add value. Till I started realizing that poverty and hunger need not necessarily be economic in nature, even though the Millennium Goal possibly says that. If we step aside for a moment and say that, is there hunger for knowledge? Is there hunger for education? Is there hunger for integrity? Is there hunger for ethics? Suddenly, that goal becomes a little bit larger and not limited to saying, okay, you guys get $1 a day, we'll try and take it to 2. But that doesn't come in unless certain basic social, cultural, ethical values come into an individual's mind. If I'm an illiterate, barely earning my wages a day and barely being able to support my family, and if I am not made aware of the importance of educating my child or my children, it really doesn't matter. My child will be born in poverty and he will live through a life of poverty. So I think eradication of poverty or hunger, or for that matter education, is not something which happens suddenly. There have to be cultural shifts in what we do, in our thought processes. And once we are able to understand why there is poverty. Yes, the lady when she started said that climates have become very important today, that as much as we try with the kind of things happening around us, it's very difficult to control even crops. But if you go back 3 steps behind, not just 1, and ask ourselves, who is responsible? Who is responsible for carbon footprints? Who is responsible for greenhouse effects? Nobody from top made a hole in the ozone layer. We did it ourselves in our greed, in our hunger to make more, to create more out of nothing. So there is nothing left. A very startling fact. I don't know how many of you know how much of potable drinking water is left in the world. There is 1.6% potable drinking of potable water left in the world, where close to 73% is water. You can't drink the other 72%. Who did this? We. Well, I'll come back to my presentation because I do not have too much time, so we'll try and take you through what we do as an organization. Reliance is into a lot of businesses. It's not just one business. However, we do not have any fixed plan for doing CSR, because we believe whatever we do is participative by nature and in nature, and it contributes positively to every social responsibility that a corporate like us has and has made in the last 40 or 50 years. So we do not have a cell called CSR, we do not have a division called CSR, we do not have people working for CSR modules or CSR mandates, because what we do itself is an activity that tries to alleviate poverty from a country called India. So if you see the amount of money that we've made, it's not funny. We are possibly the 2nd or 3rd largest corporate in India, and that doesn't happen if we don't get our basics right. So that itself is proof that we've done the right things in the right way. But what we've done is very critical. I don't have a pointer, so maybe you'd have to go to the next slide. If you see the figures at the bottom, I don't know. See, two important figures you can't see. It says we have a customer base of 100 million, which basically means 1 out of every 10 Indians is our customer, which means we affect his life positively. He could be someone earning less than the proverbial $1 a day, or he could be something making more than $1,000 a minute. It doesn't make a difference, because the credo is such that the products and services that we've created over the last 58 years can address the very, very poor as well as the extraordinarily rich. It's going to be a little difficult because I'm not sure whether you're being able to see this, but I think it's important. But Reliance also has played a very, very large role in the economic development of India. So you name an industry, whether it's telecommunications, whether it's roadways, whether it's industry, whether it's financials, whether it's power, we've had a role to play, whether it's entertainment for that matter. We've had a role to play in each of the industries, and the way we made it positive is, I'll give you a very small example. Like, say for example, we are developing infrastructure, we are creating roadways. Now, what does roadways essentially do? It connects a particular place A to a particular place B, which hitherto was unconnected. So what happens? People can move from position A to position B. Now what happens post that? There is business, there is trade, there is conversation, there is communication. Not this kind of though, but a positive kind of communication, where you start talking to each other, you start trading with each other, you start creating business opportunities with each other. So there is a set of people who are employed by the organization to build roads. Now these come from, of course, the lower economic strata of the society, the engineers, of course, belonging to the higher strata. And what they create is used by the rich and the poor. So at one instance, the people who are producing something, in this case a piece of roadway, are people who possibly sometimes live below the poverty line. So we are giving them an opportunity to elevate their poverty. And on the other hand, the very product, in this case, this is the roadway that they've made, is allowing people of various economic strata to talk to each other, trade, and create profits. So this is one small example. So we touch, as I said, that we touch 1 in 10 Indians every single day. It's not that once in a while we say, hello, I'm Reliance and I make a positive impact in your life. We do that on a daily basis to the products and services that we create. We have business presence in over 20,000 towns and 4.5 lakh villages in India and 5 continents across the world. So we are not just making an impact in an Indian's life, we are also contributing on a global level to various strata of society. The main companies that we have is Capital, which is of course dealing in finances, Communications, which is in the mobile business, Infrastructure, Entertainment and Power. Very key, critical businesses and very, very hinged on the economic development of the country. Like if you have got these 5 right, and there are a large number of organizations that do, there is enough scope for economic recovery in every country. So now even if I take business by business, I think this can go on endless. And sorry, there are not 170 slides, there are just 17 of them, and I'm already on the 6th or 7th one. Now if you look at the financial sector, there are products for every strata of society. So somebody can buy insurance at, if I have an equivalent in Malaysian ringgits, it's about 0.06 ringgits a day. And that's really low. I'm not sure how many countries are able to afford that kind of insurance premium and give insurance to people. And then you have much larger aspects also. Now the sellers of insurance are people from humble backgrounds. They are not extremely qualified people, but yes, they have learnt it through the Reliance way. Hours of training have made them capable of moving from illiterate people who can't earn their daily bread to a bunch of people who are now service advisors helping people buy insurance. So even in the same way, the products that we create are employing a set of people and creating insurance for another set of people, and both in lower economic stratas. There is general insurance, we create loans. Now very key important factor is that philanthropy is in its own place, but everything today has to make business sense. There has to be a return on equity and a return on investment, otherwise nobody is going to invest in a particular business line. And if it's philanthropy, it's always going to be 2 to 3% of your overall kitty as CSR, and there you are. Now, the whole revolution has been started by the SMEs, what Sarah mentioned in her first presentation. And in India, let's take it that way, 55% of the population who are working are SMEs. 25 to 28% are farmers, and the remaining 17 or 18% comprise of all the blue, white and whatever color you can think of. So when Reliance started this lending business, it was very clear in its mind, who do I lend to? The future of the country, the SMEs. So we are the very few non-banking financial companies that have products which are specifically designed for the SMEs who actually, like somebody who makes this is an SME for us. Somebody who makes that board out there is an SME. I'm sure he's the same SME in various countries across the globe. Now it's very difficult for them to get funds because normal banks don't understand their business. So they're a risk. And normally as human beings we are risk averse. So if there's a risk, we're going to stay away from it. But we look at it a little differently because we believe that somebody who has nothing today and is willing to invest everything is a risk that as an organization it's worth taking for us. Sorry about that. So if you look at the impact of what Reliance Capital is, we employ 11,000 people in the country, which are on rolls. Off rolls, there are many, many more. And who are these people? They are people who've just passed class 10. I think it's O-level still here. I'm not exactly sure about the educational system in Malaysia. But class 10, I don't know what it means out here. But there it's an O-level. From there to possibly the most qualified people in the country or possibly even in the world. What our products do, they allow people to start living. So basically either it's buying insurance or insuring what they protect, insuring what they value, to giving them financial assistance and aid to start something which allows them to live life with dignity and not go begging and borrowing for funds all across their lives, but investing in their business plan because we believe they are able to make money. When they make money, we get interest back. We also make money as an organization. Communication, another story where I think the story at India is extremely bright. And this was our late chairman, Sri Dhirubhai Ambani's vision, that India is still possibly one of those countries where there is a lot of writing, letters, postcards, inland. And 20 years ago, he had this vision that the price of a postage stamp, and call rates in India were very high. 20 years ago, there would be nearly, if I go back, it would be at that time the ringgit's value, 2 ringgits per minute. 20 years ago, there was a lot of money. So he said, I need to create a proposition where the cost of communicating will be lesser than the cost of postage stamps. And that's how Reliance Communication was born. And why did he do that? Was it philanthropy only? Absolutely not. It was a wonderful business idea. But what it did was, it brought millions of people together because suddenly a mobile and a handset on equated monthly installment schemes as a bundle package 18 years or 20 years ago. Now that's vision and what it led to. People who could not read or write, could not communicate, started picking up phones and talking. Now what happens when you start talking? You break boundaries and you break borders. So what do you do if you're a small farmer who is extremely dependent on the middleman to take his or her produce to the market to sell? You don't have a choice but to depend on the farmer, or on the middleman. But now you start talking. And when you start talking, you cut out the middleman. You speak directly to the person who buys your produce. And that's where and you start integrating the entire value chain of businesses. So that's what Reliance Communication did. 18 years before, it created a plan which allowed you to speak to somebody you had to speak to at a price which was lower than the then postage stamp payable in the country. We made a lot of money. Reliance Communication is an extremely profitable side of the business. But in turn, it broke boundaries, it broke barriers, and it allowed the poorer people to talk to each other and even to the rich, thereby again creating business opportunities among the rich and the not so rich. We employ a fair amount of people out there, again, right from the lower middle income group to very high individuals, very highly studied. And we are also there in a lot of other countries also, not just limited to India. Now and I said, what was the impact? communication has a very large impact. It allows you to do a lot of things which is impossible without communication. Now imagine a room as large as this with more people, and this lapel mic doesn't exist. I wouldn't be heard by the last bench. But because of this, everybody in the room can hear me. So that's the role of communication, and this is a very small example. If you start multiplying the factors, you'd realize what communication does to a country or an organization. Infra. Now this is the backbone of a country's growth, of a country's growing economy. And again, what does this allow people to do? It starts allowing you to travel, commute from, so at one level you have communication, at one level you have financial assistance or financial aid to do what you've always wanted to do, but couldn't because there was not enough people understanding you or your business mantras. And then what happens after that? You need to take your produce from point A to point B. Because you have to eliminate a lot of these in-between people so that supplier and buyer are meeting directly. So what does infrastructure do? A, it employs people, that I think was the first example I took, to create those very roadways and structures. And I'm sure we all know that in any country, the workforce which are actually digging the road and laying the bitumen or paving the stones are not, extremely rich people. They're poor. They belong to the lowest state of the society. So this is an opportunity for them to earn their daily bread in a very positive manner. And millions of people are using this product, which is a road here, to commute from one place to the other, thereby enabling trade, enabling them to earn their livelihood, which, if that road was not there, would not have been possible. And how that also comes into place? They talk on a mobile phone, or even for that matter, fixed landline. This also allows, if you also understand that there are countries where the public transport system is very, very strong. There are some that you're entirely dependent on private transports. India as a country is extremely strong as far as public transport is concerned. So you don't necessarily need to have your own car. You don't necessarily need to hail your own cab. The public transport system, using this very infrastructure that Reliance Infra has created, starts allowing people to move from one town to the other. Now what does this, you come from a smaller town, you settle in a larger town. You increase your chances of making more money. You increase your chances of earning more money. And this is where cycles start taking place. So you move from small to medium to big and large, and that's why the whole SME concept also comes into play. Another very critical factor, especially among the younger generation, I think their minds are, they have so many options to do so many things. They're kind of steamrolled by media types and media options every day. Movies, I don't know how much of it is that this part of the country, but in India, movies have a huge societal impact. There have been generations that have been actually buoyed by what a movie has shown, which has led to positive influencing on their life. Some have not been so positive also. Now, a lot of social messages, whether it's education, whether it's integrity, whether it's corruption, whether it's ethics in India, is passed through films. Because it's a mass media, the tickets are not so expensive, and it's an opportunity for you to, see a dream world on celluloid, but it also has a very strong social message. So it's not that every film Reliance Entertainment makes has a social message ingrained in it, but some of them do. And the larger ones, of course, do. And what it also does is, it creates a positive influencing factor in the lives of the people who come and watch that film. And we've had enough blogs and enough Facebook posts and Twitter likes and all that handles and stuff happening, which says that, yes, it made a difference in my life. I saw what happened. It's not a very large number, but we believe it's an opportunity to ensure that we are passing on the right message, because we don't run schools. It's easy if you're running schools. As a group, we do not have schools in the country or colleges. So what is the easiest and quickest way to pass on a social message to lots of people at the same time? Films are a very immediate source for doing that. So again, there is a social message. Now, when you're making a film, again the plethora, there is an actor who charges a humongous amount of money, and there is a boy who keeps moving the light. He's called a spot boy in our country. Wages would be ranging from about, in your equivalent, 20, 25 ringgits a day. That's not a lot of money. But in our country, that allows him to lead a respectable life, without which he'd be having nothing. So if you see systematically, each of the businesses that we are in, will not have something that says, okay, this is CSR and this is not. But the way we've structured our businesses is that there is an influencing factor in the lives of the people we employ, positively, and the products and services that this group of people create, right from somebody who's lived in abject poverty to somebody who has mansions, are positively enhancing the life of the people who are using these products and services. Again, right from the people who've lived in abject poverty and moved up the value chain on the economic strata, till the individual who possibly is, using a helicopter to commute from his workplace to his residence. Thank you.